Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to Soldier Speaks English, and today I have with me Sabine Kayani, who also happens to be my wife, but she has done her master's in law in human rights from London Schools of Economics, and she's born and brought up in the UK, and that is why she's here as a guest on this very sensitive topic with me. Once I moved to the UK permanently, then and even before that, because my family has shifted to the UK, my entire maternal family, almost entire maternal family in the 1960s, like Sabine's family moved here, the entire family in the same time period or even before that. I mean, the grooming gangs issue really did, it would hit me hard because that is something which would be identified with being a British Pakistani. And that's why I've got a flag right behind me of the UK and Pakistan today. You know, we've got this identity as a British Pakistani, and once the identity is being maligned in a particular way, which is morally degrading, so it does, it doesn't help, obviously. And once you read headlines in the Spectator like the one you're watching right now, I mean, obviously it does not help. I mean, how Pakistan's rape culture led to the UK's grooming gang. The Spectator did this story in the coffee house. I mean, in the Pakistan, these such kind of stories are published regarding India, and now you're reading it about Pakistan. So it is a harsh reality. So, Sabine, this is a sensitive but very important topic. Before we start, how would you define the term grooming gangs as used in British media and courts?
How would I define it? Hello to everybody listening, firstly. Secondly, the definition of a grooming gang is what it implies. You groom a child or you groom anybody could be groomed, but in this particular instance, legally speaking, these girls who were groomed were children. So it's the grooming of a child, turning them into something that they can use. I mean, they don't see them. I say thing because these people do not see them as human. They see them as objects to be used for multiple reasons we're going to discuss further. There are obviously, if you've asked a question very specific, but I want to elaborate, and the elaboration definitely is that there's psychological, sociological, cultural, financial factors, many things which I believe have brought about this phenomenon. And I do hope, let me put this through very clearly, that this stops, not just because it's wrong that Pakistanis are being called out, but the fact that it is wrong, morally wrong. And we, as a Pakistani community, people who are British Pakistanis, even the Pakistanis who are coming from abroad, need to stop this through, obviously, the way we bring up our children, the way we teach our children to obviously address this issue and also stand up against it. Because this is a big criticism against the Pakistani community, that we do not stand up against child grooming gangs. We need to speak up against them. And I do believe that this is something, even though it's very unintentional, because I know that many Pakistanis are in the situation where they don't know what's going on because of their very non-integrated communities where they have parallel lives. They don't live in a society where white British people are a part of their community. They try their best to stay away from it. There are obvious reasons, and the reasons mostly are the fact that they have suffered a lot of racism, especially during the 60s and 70s, and they have made these parallel communities where they live side by side but without integrating.
So, Sabine, all right, I agree. But do you think what is the psychology behind this? And since you've been abused, the Pakistani community, Indians as well have been abused, but they're not doing the same thing. They've also faced the racism. But since the Pakistanis faced racism, so what is it?
No,
They're
no, no, no,
getting
no.
away with
I
it?
you didn't catch what I was trying to say. What I said was that they're living parallel lives in the sense that they have their own communities, they have their own, meaning they don't integrate with the British white societies around them. They don't, get on with them as much. They don't socialize with them. So, I mean, obviously there are exceptions. You have white neighbors, whatever, but they have their own communities within the community. So obviously they have their own culture. A lot of the women and the men who came in 1960s and 70s didn't really speak English, and they kept it like that. Many of the women didn't speak English because they didn't need to. Their societies were so involved in each other that they didn't need to. I believe, because of my experiences, that this was something protective. They wanted to protect their women, they wanted to protect themselves because of the racism and because of the fact. So this is nothing to do with the child grooming gangs, that the parallel lives that I was talking about have something to do with grooming. The grooming, the psychology behind the grooming, patriarchy, misogyny, which has been passed on from our elders onto their children, that women are free game. If they talk, walk promiscuously, it's okay for you to do what you want with them. So they have this thing in their mind that if your woman is covered up, it's something that they need to respect. Whereas if the woman is open, where we see a lot of children who are, due to issues and social issues within the UK, we have girls, the white British girls, who have been neglected as children, who's come from single parent families, broken homes, who are being exploited because of this very reason. And
Hold on,
they see,
hold on, hold on. Do you think that the Pakistani girls who are not being neglected inside, living inside this closed, disintegrated societies, they are not being abused? I mean, there are
no,
stories. I mean,
this is where we're coming to. The issue here is that the Pakistani girls, especially the ones from 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, even now, even present day Pakistani girls, this is if they're abused, they will not publicly say anything, because instead, because of the society that they come from, instead of anybody taking their side, I'd say a huge majority will say it was the girl's fault. Marriage prospects, oh, no one's going to marry her if we tell anybody she's been abused. These are cultural aspects in that society which prevent women from Pakistani Asian backgrounds from coming forward, because they don't want the stigma attached to them. So this is one of the reasons why there probably are less documented cases of Asian or Pakistani groomed girls, as obviously a lot of the British white girls have come forward, which to their credit is amazing, because this has actually highlighted a problem which needs to be solved from both sides, not just one side. And there are social aspects and psychological and cultural aspects which need to be addressed, especially if we want to move forward in this country and live side by side in peace.
all right. Before we move forward, because it is a serious issue and we are going to come to it, about the Pakistani British grooming involvement in the grooming gangs and the psyche, which is to be blamed for this, you know, abnormal, inhuman behavior, which is prevalent in Pakistan as well. But
Mm,
but there, once you talk about the statistics, they show predominantly not only the Pakistani British men, but predominantly once I'm talking about statistics, I'm sorry, I'll have to refer to my notes. We talk about Baroness Casey's audit of group-based child, sexual abuse, and the Home Secretary updated the national audit on group-based child sexual abuse, and it is in part of the report which we are displaying right now. Of the UK government published this report. So this report does tell you that it is not only the Pakistani men, I mean, they're who are being blamed, although it was said in the report that 7 men were found guilty of the most horrendous crimes in Rochdale between 2000 and 2006, and the perpetrators included taxi drivers and market traders of Pakistani heritage, and it has taken 20 years to bring them to justice. So, that is there. And it also mentions that the children as young as 10 as young as 10, piled with drugs and alcohol, brutally raped by gangs of men, and disgracefully let down again and again by the authorities who were meant to protect them and keep them safe. Well, that is there as well. And the report goes on. It's a very long report. The audit describes
Okay,
that.
considering what,
Yes,
sorry, I really do want to interrupt here because you touched on the fact that the Pakistanis are the ones that are obviously most notorious when it comes to the grooming gangs, the grooming gangs of children. But if we look at the overall statistics, when we look at, obviously the stigma is attached because it's such a prominent case and it has come forward onto the media. But overall child sex abuse statistics show that white British men are the most likely to be involved in this sort of what you'd say sexual exploitation, but not that there's a difference. If you look at the Pakistani grooming gangs, it was between girls from between the ages of I think 11 to 15, whereas the white British sexual exploitation is with toddlers, children, people who are of an age below 11. This is what is usually more prominent in that. And this is where most of the sentences which have been carried out in the courts have been made. So this is the significant difference. So you have to ask yourself that what is the motivation behind each? What is it? I mean, you look at all
before,
aspects. You look at the
all right,
psychological.
I
Yeah.
take your point. Before we go there, why do you think this issue receives such disproportionate coverage compared to similar crimes committed by other ethnic groups? And the Pakistani British community is singled out, and you just brought out the statistics. White British men statistically are way too far and above than the Pakistani British men. But why do you think the Pakistani British men then get this kind of coverage? And why then do you think that places like Rotherham and Rochdale have created a moral panic that is the far right now exploits it? No, Zaidi baat
Because
hai.
these are organized groups, whereas you see white British offences, well, they may be organized in certain sections of society hierarchies, but if you see them individually, if you see the cases you find that have been taken to court and have been sentenced, it's mostly individuals. There are a few groups, I have come across those, but whereas this is it's an organized group, and it's been happening in the north mostly of England, where most of the, I'd say, poverty stricken areas of the UK are, and where most of the migration occurred. Obviously in the 60s and in the 70s there was mass migration from places like Mirpur, and they have huge vast communities. And this is no, obviously I'm not trying to pinpoint any one community, but the majority of people in this country, I'd say, or 73% are from Mirpur. They had very severe issues as far as education was concerned, coming from rural backgrounds. I mean, these are facts. These aren't criticisms. These are facts. And obviously these things can be changed. You can get education, which you can see the new generation, the third, the fourth, and the subsequent generations are getting educated. They're seeing the world for what it is. They're rejecting patriarchy and misogyny. But this was the clear reason why a lot of people, especially the second generation that was in the UK, because when the people from Pakistan migrated to the UK, the first generation did have employment. They did have prospects and they did work and they were busy. So they stayed away from this. Whereas the second generation, if you observe, they had nothing. They were unemployed most of the time, and they obviously had a very strict community guideline that they can't step foot out of that. They have to stay within the bounds of their community, their culture, their religion. A very, I'd say, distorted version of Islam, a very, very distorted version of Islam with a lot of cultural aspects put into it to make it or turn it into what they perceive as Islam. So that I have to make very, very clear. So this is not Islam they were following. This were predated from, I think, any religion, misogynistic and patriarchal sentiments and training or culture. Even their mothers agreed. I mean, the cases that I came across, a lot of the mothers were saying, "Oh, well, the girls are loose. That's why my boy did it," because obviously they were trying to make excuses for such a disgusting crime, but they used their cultural background that, this is why they did it and that was allowed. They dehumanized their victims. They didn't think of them as human, which made it much easier for them to carry out this abuse. And I feel that that was one of the main psychological reasons. And the group dynamics, the fact that they were in groups, they didn't think that they were individually responsible. They had no backlash from their group. And power dynamics, you understand, when you're in a group, you feel more powerful. You feel as if you're not the only person there, so you're not you're not basically, you're not answerable to anything. So this happens, and then when you think that you're not answerable, you continue. It's homogenous packs, and they feel they're empowered. They don't have any personal guilt. They fetish, this Pakistani fetish of white fair skin. They didn't have that because they were forced into marrying their cousins or forced into marrying people from Pakistan, or they were told that they have to marry someone from Pakistan. But at the same time, their parents and their forefamilies carried over this concept that fair skin is beautiful or it's desirable and it's something you should lust after. So this is what they would do. They would go after their fantasies, and they would obviously marry their Pakistani cousins and counterparts from back home, or even from the UK. Now this is starting to happen, but they had that fetish. They had to fulfill it, and so this is something which was happening consistently within the community. And they had desires because they saw the communities around them, but they also had to keep to their strict protocols in the communities that they lived in.
All right. So, in the first part of your answer, this particular answer, you've linked the integration issue with this grooming gang issue, because they couldn't integrate, they could not understand the British values and how. All right, but they're not perfect. They've got their issues. The social infrastructure has got their own issues. There are social issues, upbringing issues, but there are issues, deep-rooted issues in the Pakistani community as well. So, because they were not integrated, that is one of major reason this they were not called out for this actions, and they come then back. Then that takes us to the cultural and social dimensions. Now, as someone of Pakistani heritage yourself, how
Hmm.
do you view the cultural explanations often cited? Are they genuine attempts to understand, or lazy stereotypes?
um Okay, let's just get into the nitty gritty and explain how these grooming gangs operated. They were good looking guys, a lot of them. Some of them obviously weren't because of the pictures we've seen on the newspapers, but a lot of them, this is how they managed to get these girls trapped into it. Culturally, they were not obviously they bypassed the Islamic traditions or Islamic restrictions on premarital intercourse, and they felt, or they made themselves believe that they were targeting infidels, so it was okay to do that. Um, it basically ties to their psychology in the sense that they have these permission structures where group reinforcement normalizes the violence. The vulnerability of these victims, they came from broken homes, which I obviously previously touched on. They touched on their psychology, and they wanted to be their boyfriends. And because they were quite good looking and the girls wanted attention, they managed to trap them, and they had a boyfriend girlfriend relationship for most of the part. And then all of a sudden, there came a stage when either he got fed up of her, or he wanted to obviously exploit her. And then this is where it started from. They thought, okay, this girl has easily become my girlfriend. She's easily allowed me to have intercourse with her. She's allowed me to obviously use her. So now she's going to easily be manipulated. And because of the vulnerable situations that they were in and the kind of places that they came from and the kind of family backgrounds that they had, it was very easy to exploit them. So what they did, they would say, well, some so and so is after me, so and so is trying to kill me. The only way they're going to let me off the money that I owe them is if so and so or you will sleep with them, and then they will, let me live. So the girls were very emotional, very young, and very naive, and so they agreed. And this is how it continued, and that's how they were exploited. Now, this is a universal thing. Any culture, any background could do that. If you can find a way to exploit somebody, you will. But this is what I mean, obviously, the question that you asked, I've completely forgotten, but I'm giving you an explanation of how these people operated. So the culture that exists within Pakistan is very similar. If you can exploit anybody, you will do it. And
Yeah,
that's
that's what I'm
exactly what
talking
they
about.
carried on. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. And do you think the sick mentality is still not prevalent in
It,
our
it
society?
definitely is. And we have this.
Let me finish here, please. In which
Okay.
your son, once he takes a ride in a cab, the driver tells him, looking at him, that he is from the Pakistani origin. He advises him out of the blue that, all right, you can, if you go
Okay,
to,
let's put this into a bigger picture. My son, and I
you
was going
haven't,
to touch on
all
that.
right,
I
all
will
right.
tell you
Yeah, yeah,
exactly
yeah,
the whole
please do.
story. So, because
Yeah,
right
go
now,
ahead. Yeah,
the way you're
please.
telling it, it's like it's an anecdote from like a newspaper or something, or something on that lines. But the what actually happened was that my son was traveling and he wanted to take a taxi back home. Um, he happened to come across a taxi driver who was of Pakistani origin, quite old. He asked my son if he was Pakistani, and my son said, "Yeah, I am Pakistani. I'm from Pakistani background. I've come from Pakistan, whatever you want to call it." So he gave that impression that he was Pakistani, and he asked him, "Do you have any girlfriends?" And he said, "No." And then after that, he said, "Well, you should get some." Okay, you tell the rest of it now because I think you know that. Just wanted to start it off for you.
Yeah, well, because he picked him up from his friends who were white British, obviously, and well, he just asked him because of his black hairs that, are you from Pakistani, and he said, yeah, I am. And then he advised him. He said, have you got girlfriend and stuff? He said, it's none of your business. But he said, well, why are you asking me? And the old man told him that, well, you can use them like in sexual context, but then throw them away. That's what he told them. Just use them, all right. And he used very, very crude language, and our son was disgusted, and he came home and told us that this old man, the cab driver, he told us this, that he told me this, that you should, I'm just giving it, I'm trying to find the right words, because we have to follow the
And
community
you do
guidelines.
know, and you do
Yeah.
know that the statistically, and this is a fact as well, that the majority of the grooming gangs existed due to taxi drivers, due to the fact that they had takeaways, and they have these sort of businesses where these women would hang around, and that's how they would groom them. That's how they would find them.
Yeah,
And
so
so this,
we're talking
do,
about only a couple of months ago. The old man told our son that since he saw that he was with his friends and they are white, and he said that, well, you should abuse them, and they were, I'm sure his class fellows
no, no, I
would be.
don't think he said abuse them. He just said use them, because he
You,
thought that obviously because they are promiscuous at a very young age, or even if older,
Sabine, the
they'll
word
allow you to do it.
he used the
Mm,
F word for them. You should use the. He said you should do this with them. He used the F word. Do this with them, all right. But
mm.
don't marry them. Don't marry them afterward, all right. That is the
No, no,
kind of.
this is what I'm trying to tell you. This is the mentality of the Asian community, that your women, you don't go, obviously nowadays it's not really, I'd say, limited to white British girls. Even the Pakistani girls are quite open and promiscuous as far as
Especially those who
having,
come from Pakistan. Especially those who come from
especially
Pakistan.
those who come from
On the
Pakistan.
daddy's money. Yeah,
I think
yeah.
media has a lot to answer for this, and they've become quite promiscuous. They do whatever they need to do, but this is still this in the older generations mentality. They think that our women are pure, which they're not anymore. And they are quite promiscuous. They've adjusted to the society. Even in Pakistan, it's very prevalent, and usually the girls that come from Pakistan are the most active when it comes to these sort of things. But they still have this mentality, the elders, that the white women are available and anyone can, they will say that they will sleep with you. They will easily sleep with you without any restrictions or any morals or morality, and then you can just say bye bye to them and then move on.
Yeah.
So
So
this
this
is the concept that they have.
so this is a question of moral accountability, Sabine. And the next question is there a discussion within the British Pakistani families about toxic masculinity, power
I think
abuse, or moral accountability, or is it still a taboo topic?
I believe that in a lot of the educated families, there are a lot now. They do. I mean, look at us for an example. My son was disgusted. We didn't have to make him feel disgusted. We couldn't force him to feel disgusted, but he was disgusted. That shows our upbringing. We have many families like that here now. But I believe that the more older generation, the rural family, even now, I mean, there are quite a few I could say that, that are still into that mental kind of. Uh, I can't really. There is still in that element where they believe that it's allowed. So she allowed it, and so it's okay. And we can't blame them. The girls were like this, and so they do. They have this honor code where they feel that because of the fact that they have their own the grooming gangs and the family order and and honor and stuff. That our daughters wouldn't do that. They would. So that means that they're wrong, not us. And the son, boys will be boys, that sort of thing. And this is something which was quite culturally prevalent in the British society, in Western societies as well. So you can't really just limit it to Pakistanis. But yes, it's a huge issue right now, still in Pakistanis. But um, they have to evolve. Just as the Western society, that you still have misogynistic people in Western countries, you still have Western British men, white British men who are misogynistic and have a patriarchal kind of a thought process. But it's evolved. It's not socially acceptable, and until it's not socially acceptable within Pakistani communities, which is happening now, it will not stop. So if we are, as a community, as a culture, evolving much slower than the evolved culture, which is parallel to us right now, which is the British culture, and we tend to sort of sideline ourselves and think, okay, they have their own issues, we have our own. My personal belief is we have to take the best of both. I'm not going to ever say that the British society or the culture is completely 100% perfect. They have their flaws. The reason that these girls, the poor girls that are in this situation, is because of the flaws in the culture, in the society. And exactly the same with the Pakistani culture. They have many, many flaws which we need to address and we need to override. And I believe taking the best from both cultures and having a balance is the best way to move forward.
Yes, but Sabine, firstly, a comment. When we talk about such a thing, we get backlash from our own society, from our own community, and that is extraordinary. In fact, people even talk to your brothers once I go out publicly and talk about such issues, and we get a lot of hate messages even, and then we have to explain our point of view. So the question is, how do we encourage self-reflection within communities without giving ammunition to the racist narrative? Because that is their point. Okay, yeah, once you're going to talk about it, the racist or the far right, they'll come after us, and you're journalizing it. And in fact, it's not us journalizing it, it is the media which is journalizing it. But then the question is, but still we have to encourage self reflection and moral accountability. How do we do that? Because if we do that, if we right now we're talking about
Education.
it, yeah, that is the question. Yeah, that is the answer, in
We
fact. Yeah.
need we need to educate the mothers, especially the illiterate mothers. We need to tell them what is wrong, what is right. We need to tell them that how they suffered at the hands of their husbands is not normal. We need to tell them that the way their brothers treat their wives or their sisters is not normal. We have to teach them what their sons are doing with their sisters is not normal. It needs to be addressed. You need to evolve. You need to tell them that this is not Islam. Islam teaches respect. I think there was a stage in Islam where women were getting so many rights that everybody around them were frightened that this is going to override everything that we've ever been taught as a patriarchal society. So if you consider that, if you read Islam, if you read into everything that into the Quran, you will realize how many rights women have. You have
Sabine,
to
sorry to cut
understand.
you short. Sorry, really sorry. I know you hate it, and I know I'm gonna get a,
Not
you know,
me. Everybody hates it. So
everybody hates
don't
it, but
try to just put it onto
still,
me. Go on,
yeah,
carry
but
on.
I can't help it. Please, I'm sorry. Over here on this point, don't you think that this sick mentality of the older generation, not all of them, but a select group, which you've
Hmm.
just discussed, it is forcing the younger generation to alienate from Islam. It is alienating them from Islam. The mindset or the sick mentality or whatsoever you want to call it, the lack of moral accountability is forcing our younger generation away from religion, from Islam.
I was trying to touch on that point when I was speaking. The point I was making was that because they are associating the cultural practices, which have become a norm, which are centuries old cultural practices, people from India, obviously, this was Pakistan and India were together. You've got the border countries of this is before Islam. All of these traditions and cultures have been passed down generation to generation, and they have been ingrained into the fabric of the Islam that these people follow. So, yes, anybody with a sane mind who comes into a society where these things are seen as wrong is going to ask questions. Okay, is this Islam? It's confusing for them. So, yeah, but for that, they need to educate themselves. And the people that are doing all of these things and promoting all of these things, they need to educate themselves. And the majority, as I mentioned before, are from an uneducated rural backgrounds. They didn't feel a need to be educated. They didn't feel a need for their children to be educated. I think there came a stage when they did start to obviously decide that, yeah, children have to be educated. And this is more than the fact that they wanted them to become better people. It was more of a medal that, yeah, my son has a degree. My But in the process, people have evolved and they are learning, they are getting better, but we have a long way to go, I think, as a society. And our people, us, we need to call these things out. We need to stand up. We need to stop this because it's not just something which affects them, it'll affect our own daughters in future. Because when will they suddenly decide that they have to stop exploiting women? And what is the I'd say the barrier which they feel is, okay, this is a Pakistani woman or this is an Asian woman, we can't touch her? And when will that be overridden? Because the stage is coming when Pakistani women, they're getting exploited, they're getting abused, they're getting promiscuous. Media is telling them that this is how it should be and that's how you should do it. So they continue doing these things. And so when will they start being exploited? It needs to stop. It needs to stop. But it was disgusting what they did to those girls. It's disgusting what they probably are going to be doing in future because this is the mentality. The mentality has to be changed.
So, how can policymakers tackle exploitation without criminalizing an entire generation of young British Pakistani men?
Mm. Schools need to start by teaching these men what is right and what is wrong. I do believe that things have been set into place, but these particular subjects on how to address the grooming and subsequent financial incentives that they have to do it, because you do understand that they make a lot of money in the process of this by exploiting these women and girls. And um, I mean, education. We need people from our community to go to different places to educate the mothers. Any mother that you find that cannot reason or who has issues, or social workers are involved, they need to be educated. I believe that that is something that the government as a whole has to look into. And from the community of the person, because they're not going to listen to someone who looks different to them, they're going to listen to somebody who looks like them. And I believe that you have to create a society where education is praised, where being morally good is praised. You find people being successful who are praised. And these things, just having money, having cars, having good clothes, having designer handbags, that isn't the praise that needs to be reinforced within the society. Because by doing that, you are reinforcing any means of getting that money, including drug smuggling, including drug selling, and drug and women trafficking, women and grooming. All of these things, they bring money into a person's life. So it's not the money that you need to praise. It's the way the person gets the money that needs to be praised. If money is obviously something you want to get to.
Yeah, well, that's another issue and another topic for another day, about the involvement of the Pakistani British or British Pakistani community in the drug business in the UK. Well, again,
You
we'll
know,
get
I'm
into.
starting to waffle now. I think we should stop
Yeah.
and ask
So
people what they think. And
yeah,
ask
sure.
them in the
So,
comments that because we've missed many things. We're not perfect. This is just an assessment based on facts, based on articles I've read, based on things that I've come across, based on my own observations as a British Pakistani growing up, seeing people doing the. I don't know many people. I think I know one person who was involved in this, and he was sentenced. And I know of him. He wasn't any friend or any family friend, or his mother. Obviously, we knew them. But I need to ask people who are reading and listening to tell me what they think are the issues and how they can be tackled, because we also want to know. I think
yeah, but
because we have a
before we
voice,
close off,
we have a
before we
voice.
go, yeah,
Yeah, can
before
I
we
just
close,
finish? We
yeah, please
we
do.
have a voice. We need to use that voice. We have
Yeah,
people listening to us, and we need to make sure that this comes in handy. And that's what we're trying to do.
are you finished?
No, am I
Yeah,
ever finished?
no, you're never. That's the problem, and I have to. That's all of you guys' problem is that. Oh, why do you
you,
jump in? I have to jump in
yeah,
to
but you
bring
never
the program on the
listen.
template.
You never
All right,
listen.
all right. Listen. All right.
Okay.
You not listening. I've got two more questions for you. All right,
Okay.
and yeah, the first question is how have mainstream and far right media have framed this issue, and what impact has that had on the British Pakistani men as a community?
Um, the fascist far right, they're using it to their advantage. They take pick and choose, cherry picking. They take out issues which they think are going to help them in their case, or they want to get rid of. Do you know this sort of thing happens every sort of my personal experience. What my grandfather told me, every sort of 10, 20 years, they have this
What
time
sort of
when
thing? What sort of
well,
thing?
they have a racist attitude. They start being racist towards the people that aren't like them, and then they start beating them up, and they start having these, widespread campaigns against them. And then all of a sudden, they
But we're
fight
talking
back.
about this particular issue over here of the grooming gangs issue.
Well, that's what we're
How it is
talking
being
about.
framed.
We're talking about, but you're saying it's part and parcel of the racism, isn't it? The fascism that's being promoted by these far right groups is based on racism. The fact that they're being racist and they're using this particular case, which is a minority. No matter what way you look at it, the majority of the Pakistanis in this country, whether they're from Mirpur or whether they're from Azad Kashmir or whether they're from Pakistan, the areas of Punjab or wherever, it's a very small minority of the whole community. So you can't judge or generalize. And this is being used to the advantage of the far right campaigners, reform groups like that. The immigration situation, there may be a problem. There probably is a problem, but it has to be addressed without bringing racism into it and race into it. So these things happen every few decades. You obviously haven't lived in this country long enough to know that, but my forefathers do, and they know that, and they realize that this country has had these issues, and they're resolved when they
think the
fight
problem
back.
is the trauma of growing up in a racist society. You Since I haven't lived in this country that for long, and ever since I've lived, I've found it to be fair, at least in the areas where I'm living. But you bring back you bring with you a baggage of growing up in a racist culture. So obviously, my question again is that this the old folks with a sick mentality, they might be few, they're not many, are providing ammunition to this far right racist gangs, and to be used against the young generation of British Pakistani men, and it is impacting them. That was my question, and it is definitely impacting them in a negative way. And so there has to be moral
But you
accountability,
you don't.
and they have to be
I
called
think you
out.
don't. No, no, you don't understand how the communities are interlinked with each other, how they have their own, they don't need to go into that parallel world where they're being attacked or affected because they have their own communities, they have their own people, they don't need to go out. So even if anyone points a finger at them, they're protected, not in the way that they practically, the Pakistani community go out and protect them, but they don't feel a need to step out. So if they don't feel a need to step out, they're not going to change themselves, are they? So you say they're being affected, but they're not. Internationally, sorry, nationally, as far as politics is concerned, yes, they are being affected. People are calling them out, but they don't, on a one-to-one level, it doesn't bother them. It
No, but
really does not bother them.
young British Pakistani men, they're integrating. They go out and meet people, and they are breaking the shell, and they have already done that. In fact, all right. So there is an impact on them of the reputation of the community, and it's a negative
Yes, but
impact.
then they, through their actions, show that it's not all the same. They're not all the same.
And then you're saying that, I mean, you're not saying that, but the impression which you're conveying is that there is no accountability in the British Pakistani community. There is severe accountability. People
Because
do
there's
talk about
no
it.
awareness. There is no awareness of what's going on. Most of the people are illiterate or uneducated or so ingrained in their own communities and societies that they don't want to address the problem. And they think, okay, I'll leave it, whatever. They don't know how to address it. How are they going to address it? Do you see anyone from the British white community getting up and starting to abuse their neighbors just because they've been racist to someone? No, they don't. You don't do it. It doesn't work like that. Because obviously they, even the white Brit, you will only attack somebody that doesn't look like you. You will only attack somebody who you feel is foreign. You're scared of something which you don't understand. So they understand each other, so they'll let them do it, and they will sit in their houses, talk about them, saying, "Oh, how disgusting so and so's son is, and how horrible they are." But what can they do? Do they know? They're not educated, or even if they are educated, what can they do? At most, they can go tell somebody that this is what this man is doing. What else can they do? You give me an idea, and I'm asking the audience here, give me ideas of what we can do to prevent this, to make this into something that is a not a stereotype, but you label people then in your communities, you shun them. How do you do that? How do you go about going into the local mosque and saying this so and so's son has done so and so? We need to alienate them from our community and tell them to sort yourself out. If you can't sort yourself out, then you're not coming back in. When will that happen?
Final question, Sabine. The story in The Spectator by Kawar Khaldoon Shahid, how Pakistan's rape culture led to the UK's grooming gangs. Do you think there
Oh
is a
my
rape
goodness.
culture in Pakistan? Is there a
Pakistani
rape
rape
culture in
culture
Pakistan?
is
Yeah.
completely different from the grooming gangs, a completely different phenomenon. They work on an individual basis. If they rape, it's mostly children, people who can't speak back, even boys. They will even rape boys, girls. It's a rape culture because of sexual frustration. That's another topic we're going to talk, obviously touch on as far as the girl. This is oh my goodness, I'm actually starting to tear up now because of the lack of education and awareness in Pakistan. They say that there are less women than men in Pakistan. So sorry, less men than women in Pakistan. So men have to marry twice or whatever. But this whole rape culture of raping children, raping boys, trying to obviously rape anything that you can find or whatever, even sheep, even goats. I mean, it's disgusting. Why do you think it's come about? Because there are no women of marriageable age. There is such a difference between women of marriageable age and men of marriageable age that they're not finding women at all to marry, so they have to do these things, or that's the wrong word, they don't
I
have
thought
to, but
that's
they
an Indian
choose to do
problem.
these things.
I thought that's an Indian problem, not a Pakistani problem.
No, it's also a Pakistani problem. Do you not think that the Indian culture has ingrained into the Pakistanis? They still have the same culture. Why do you think we have these problems of grooming gangs? It's not Islam that's teaching them to do this. Can you not understand that? Islam doesn't say go around raping women and raping children and raping or having grooming gangs or having premarital sex. Do you not understand that? Islam does say, though, you can have more than one wife and they're taking advantage of that. How do they do that? Oh, well, he's rich, so I'm going to go marry him even if he's got another wife. This is how it works in Pakistan, which is absolutely disgusting when you realize that there is a big difference If you go look up the statistics of Pakistani women to men ratio, you will realize that there are more men than women. So why are the women not marrying those poor men rather than going off to find rich men? It's all about the whole society is a wreck. I don't even want to talk about it anymore because I think it's the same. It's just going to the dogs. And the culture that we were once so proud of, or we thought that, this is what we have to aspire to, is drowning. Not the culture, the religion, the ideology, everything that they stood for at one stage that we were taught about is just going to the dogs.
So look how tables have turned. Growing up, we used to be told that the Gora culture is all to be blamed for what's happening to their girls. But now it's happening all around in Pakistan with the Pakistani girls as well. And that has been happening for quite a long time. We have not been talking about it. Let's be frank
You
and honest.
touched on racism. Sorry, let me just get back to that because you changed the topic and I wanted to discuss this. I had the good fortune to be able to experience both sides. I lived in a town where one side was purely white. And then we moved to that area, and I was the only Pakistani person in that school alongside my brother. So I got to see that side where they were very racist, but I was quite strong. So I managed to keep my culture intact, and I used to promote myself and my background and, used to show off about stuff instead of feeling embarrassed and trying to become like them. But then we, because of the racism, had to move back to the side of the town where we had, the majority. Well, I wouldn't say majority, but we had a big community, a Pakistani community, which we felt safer in. So the safety aspect was something we had to go to be able to obviously have a proper life and, to be able to integrate in that way.
Was it really safe? Was it really safe?
Then we had other issues where we were talked about. If we talked to, let's say, someone from our school, oh my God, she's having an affair with him. And we had these we had, obviously people from that kind of a culture background where they were quite backward. And if you were seen talking to a man, oh my God, she's a really bad person. And then, I mean, when we were growing up, all of the girls, poor women, they were just really oppressed. They had to, wear dupattas on their head, even though my family didn't ever make me do that. And they would take them off at school and put their makeup on. And because my family never forced me to wear a dupatta on my head, I don't do that sort of stuff. We'd be no makeup and more concentrating on our education and that sort of stuff. So it was a very confusing time for a lot of the girls. It all depends on your upbringing, though. A lot of it depended on the way you were brought up.
Finally, Sabine, I know we've already talked about everything, but finally, as somebody who studied law and as a woman, what message would you give to both victims and communities feeling unfairly targeted?
If you feel you're unfairly targeted, I believe that you're not doing enough. Because there is an issue. We cannot deny that there is an issue, and we need to understand where it came from, where the roots are. And I firmly believe that the roots begin at home, because a child doesn't just get up and start doing these things and feel that they're acceptable and does not feel any guilt whatsoever. People make mistakes. They will feel guilt. They don't feel guilt. Why? Because of the upbringing that they've had, because of the fact that their mothers or fathers have never told them that this is wrong. The example we gave of that taxi man, what do you think his children are going to be like? Honestly. What do you
Obviously,
think? If his father is saying that, if the father is saying, yeah, it's okay to go and use whoever and then, dump them and go marry someone from Pakistan and, she's going to be a good wife, whereas you have no idea what the women from Pakistan are up to nowadays. And I'm not saying that in a generalized way, but there are many cases of people, infidelity and all sorts of stuff going on, especially in the rural villages. And it's usually the low class and the extreme high elite classes, but you see it. It's not something you can deny. So it's just it's a fantasy. It's a conception that they have in their head that the girls from here are loose and the girls from there are not. So they need to change their way of thinking. So the question you ask, can you refer to it again so I can answer it?
yeah, I just wanted an advice to the
What,
communities. You've
what
said they need to
to
do more,
advise who?
and to the victims. your
Yeah,
message to the.
the victims have to come forward. Even if the British Pakistani and the Asian communities, they are getting victimized, if they are being abused, they need to come forward. Do not think that this is going to be a stigma. People will support you. We will support you. Everybody who has a mind, a sane mind, will support you. And why would you want to be supported by the jahils, as we call them, or the uneducated lot? Why would you want to be supported by backward people who are maligning Islamic values, who don't even have any idea of what Islam is, and they use their culture and their upbringing as an excuse to be able to do what they want, and they make themselves feel good because, yep, it's allowed, it's permissible. But is it permissible? Have they looked into it? So we need to obviously tell the victims to come forward. We need them for them to understand that the majority of our communities do not agree with what is happening, and we support them. And for the people that are doing this, they need to learn that what is happening from the home, and what has to change has to start from the home.
All right. On this note, my message to the predators is that what goes around comes around. Today, if you are teaching your kids, and today, if it's okay for you to go around and abuse other people who are facing societal problems or family problems, well, your children are going to suffer the same, because what goes around comes around. Thank you, Sabine, for joining us. Ladies and
Thank
gentlemen,
you for
please do.
having me. And I just want to say thank you for listening. Please do leave your comments. We really do appreciate them. Any feedback, we would like to know how to address this issue. You never know, we might actually do something practically about this to stop what's going on. And obviously, we because we're a husband and wife team, we don't do it as professionally as most people would probably do it. So bear with us, and do leave your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you already haven't subscribed to the channel, please do that, and share the video if you think you need to share it. And if you want us to talk more about such issues, do let us know. And if you are part of the Pakistani diaspora, you may be not living in the UK, in Europe, in North America, wherever you are, in Australia, let us know what issues do you want us to raise and talk about. This is something we're personally involved in, and we go through, personally affected as well. So that's why we wanted to talk about it, and we'll talk more about such issues. But do leave your comment. Thank you.